Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're here today with Deborah Roof. The Reverend Dr. Deborah Roof is an enthusiastic lifelong learner and a passionate teacher. The title of her book is Words, Wonder, and the Divine in You. Deborah is an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ with a Master's of Divinity from Colgate Rochester Crozer Divinity School and a Doctor of Ministry and Preaching from the Chicago Theological Seminary. Deborah is fluent in French, holds a master's degree in French literature, and taught French for over 20 years. Intrigued by ancient archetypical wisdom, Deborah studied and became a certified Veritas, is that the
Yep,
right
Veritas.
labyrinth facilitator. Deborah and her wife Liz have four adult daughters, their daughters' four spouses, and seven grandchildren. I also should mention that Deborah is an alum of our Writers Workshop at the Wild Goose Festival. Deborah's book is being published by Peter E. Randall Publisher, and you can learn more about the book and about her work at deborahroof.com and perpublisher.com. So Deborah, congratulations so much on your great work, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Brian. I really appreciate this opportunity.
So before we get into the book, is there anything else that you'd like to people know about you?
Do you know, I think there might be, um, in today's world, people are always looking for answers, and very often they're looking for the right answer. And I think I want people to know that when you pick up my book, I don't think I'm right. And I don't think that we need to always cling to that rightness. It's about our experience. And so I think that's what I'd like people to know about me is I'm fully aware that I ain't got all the answers. I do have my experience.
Well, I just had a conversation not too long ago with someone about the whole concept of living in the gray,
Oh,
which, was a very important learning for me several years ago. So I hear you.
yes. Sometimes the questions are much more
Yes,
life-giving.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And asking a better question.
Yes, that's true.
So before we talk about your book specifically, would you like to tell us more about some of your previous work?
So I was a teacher of French and Spanish for 20 years. And then being coaxed into the church, um, I still was a teacher, and it became teaching faith, teaching the stories, the sacred stories. And so, to describe me, lifelong learner, absolutely. Teaching and learning, um, that's to me the quest that we're on. And it's the road to understanding one another.
Amen. Amen. So let's talk about the book. I mean, as I mentioned, the title, Words, Wonder, and the Divine in You. So what made you decide to write a book?
Well, I've always been intuitive and a borderline mystic without having the words to describe that. And I knew in my heart that one day I would write a book.
Hmm.
Did not know what it would be. And each decade, well, maybe my book will be about this, and maybe my book will be about this, and maybe it's this. And so this decade is Words, Wonder, and the Divine in You is the book that was birthed. The decision to write, I've always been a writer.
Hmm.
To write a book, I just knew I would.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. Um, so the book's divided into three sections: Words matter, wonder matters, and spirituality matters. So why did you decide to structure the book in that way?
As I said, I'm very intuitive and I write and I pour myself out and then I look and see what bubbles to the top. And when after I'd written quite a few pages, I realized that what I was talking about was things that matter. And as soon as I said that, things that matter, then I looked again at what I had written and, oh yeah, words are really important. Um, and the way we speak and the power, and then wonder. It is just such a powerful word, and it's such a fabulous way to be in the world, is to look at the wonder because we're surrounded by it. And the divine in you is kind of biblical, I think.
Kinda, yeah.
Kinda, yes.
Well, you'll enjoy the fact Barbara Brown Taylor at one of the Writing for Your Life conferences did her whole talk about wonder,
I saw that.
and it was just
Mhm. Yeah,
surprisingly phenomenal.
yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
So I'd like to read from a couple of the endorsements for the book. This one is from our author and pastor friend Molly Basquette, who says, Deborah Roof had a mystical experience in an AA meeting soon after coming out as queer. She later lets God nudge her to trade in her closet of brown garb for a wardrobe splashy with tie-dye. She doesn't try to sell readers on the merits of church, but tells the truth that we can reliably and more palpably encounter the divine outside of institutions. This little book of wonders is for anyone who has been burned by toxic Christian theology or just needs their longtime faith exfoliated to get at the tender, fresh skin underneath. So can you tell us a little bit about the mystical experience that she refers to?
I would be happy to. Um, as Molly points out, it was in an AA meeting. So soon after realizing that I was, soon after getting sober, and I started looking in the mirror, which I had never done. And I started to see myself, and I recognized that I was probably gay. And the therapy group that I was involved in did not like that idea. They put a whole different spin on that idea. Um, I don't like the term homosexual because being gay, being queer isn't, 9 times out of 10, it's not even about sex.
Hmm.
The point is, um, they made me feel bad. They wanted me to feel guilty. They wanted me to, one woman got up and literally in a therapy group screamed at me, God did not get you sober so that you could date women.
Oh
She,
my goodness.
and honestly, Brian, she was a little bit more vulgar than that. I'm not going to say that here. The point being, I was so depressed. And so I went to my minister who said, if you can be normal again, you're welcome to stay.
Hmm. Jeez.
And so I was in a black hole, and I was suicidal.
Hmm.
I decided to end my life because I could not do this to my children. The despair was unimaginable.
Hmm.
And so I did what a lot of people do when they're in that deep, dark place, is they will call people to say goodbye, but not really say that they're saying goodbye.
Hmm.
And my best friend caught on, and
Hmm.
she said, you need to be at my house, Deborah. It'll take you 14 minutes to get here. And if you're not here in 15 minutes, I will never forgive you. And she hung up the phone.
Oh.
Well, here's a note for anyone who's ever dealing with someone in a deep, 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 dark depression, is because they are in that black hole, they will obey instructions.
Hmm.
So I did. I drove to her house and she said, let's go to a meeting. And I didn't want to, but that's one of the slogans in AA is don't drink and go to a meeting. And so I did, with her at my side. And we're sitting in this typical room of AA There must have been 30 or 40 people in that room. There were 2 tables in the center, and there were people sitting around those tables. And then there were people sitting around the outside of the room. And that's where I was. It doesn't happen often. It happens on television, but it doesn't happen often when the speaker says, I want to hear from you. And that's what he said. Halfway through the meeting, people were, talking, and he called on me. I don't know what he saw. He called on me. And I said, you want to hear what I have to say? This is what I have to say. And it's a blur, Brian, what I said. I was hurt and angry. I was destroyed.
Mm.
And I just spewed and spewed. And as I spoke, it still gets to me. This was 30 years ago, and it still gets to me. People turned their heads to look at me, and their heads started to glow. There was a glowing light behind each head. And then there was a string of light from my heart to their heart.
Wow.
Well, one right after another. And by then I was really crying and really sharing. And the room was full of light. And I saw what looks like a spider web, a web. And so actually that was one of the titles I wanted to title this book, was The Mystical Web, because that saved my life.
Wow.
In that light, I heard in my core, God loves you. There is no question. And I carry that. And I know that's true of every living being.
Goodness sake. Well, it sounds like, some of the things I've read about Marcus Borg's, mystical experience and the light aspect too.
It's true.
Wow. Talk about powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No wonder that had such a profound impact on your life.
It did.
Wow. So here's another quote from another of our author friends, Caroline Lewis from Luther Seminary, who says, with humor and heartfelt honesty, the words of this beautiful book will instill wonder in your soul, ignite your spirit, and bring love to the center of your life. So is that the sort of uplifting response that you hoped for when you wrote the book?
It is, and I'm still gobsmacked when someone like Caroline Lewis says that. I have the utmost respect for her and her work. And in fact, she, a consummate teacher, and she's the one that taught me the power of the word wonder. I attended a seminar with her probably 20 years ago, and she talked about how the Bible is a wonder. All of these different authors and all of these different centuries and all of these different geographical places, and it all came together. Wow. So yes, I did want my message to be uplifting, and thank you, Caroline.
Yay. So what else would you really like readers to take away from the book?
I think it's important for each one of us to share our spiritual journey. My mystical experience is one of billions. Each one of us has or has had a mystical experience. We explain them away, and then we never talk about them. And as much, I'm a churchy girl, and as much as I love church, the majority of people go there to listen. So seek out opportunities to share your spiritual experiences with someone who cares to listen.
Mm,
I think if we could talk more with one another about spirituality, it would only augment
absolutely.
our spirituality.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's like, I grew up in corporate America and you're not supposed to talk about, politics, religion, or sex, right?
Right?
So as a result, I think our society has been pretty poor at talking about any of those things.
Brian, I say the same thing. This is a God wink. I say the same thing all the time. We have been taught not to talk about those things, so we don't know how.
Right.
You mentioned my experience in France, and in France, they love to debate. And they don't, they discuss. Discussion is a pastime,
Mm.
and it's so rich. I remember when I lived there, there were 7 political parties. And I was like, oh, that's ridiculous. Oh boy, do I wish we had more choices, because I'm often preaching in my church about not getting seduced into our either or mentality.
Yeah.
It's so dangerous.
We do have such a dualistic
Yeah,
mode uh,
yes.
in life in lots of different ways. So, you know that our audience consists of quite a few early stage writers, and this is your first book, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. My first book.
So, can you talk a little bit about the challenges that you faced in writing the book and getting it published?
I can. Um, and um, when you say challenge, I want to add something to the challenge.
Sure.
Selling it. Okay, so writing the book, this book happened because I set up a schedule. I set up a schedule and I made myself stick to the schedule. So many pages by this date, so many pages by this date, so many pages by this date. And I kept that schedule. And then I had down the calendar, I said, I want my first group of readers to read the first draft on this date. And then I gave myself a schedule for my rewrites. And although thoughts have been swimming in my head for years, the book came out literally in 6 months, which is
Wow.
which is amazing when you talk about.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's because I set up that schedule. And I was in a group of women, and we were encouraging one another. So that's a good thing to do, is get with others who also have a goal. And it doesn't have to be writing. It could be any kind of goal, and help one another, be believing mirrors for one another. So writing the book, that was the challenge and how I did that. Publishing the book was a God wink. I talk a lot in my book about God winks. And I shared with a friend that I was writing this book. And, oh, I know a publisher.
Hmm.
So I went to talks. I had come to your talk 3 years ago. And then I would go to talks at the public library from writers, fairs, and whatnot. And so publishing, you have 3 choices. And so I chose that one. It was the selling the book that I underestimated the challenge. I'll be honest. I, okay, this is being recorded. I confess to the world that, Brian, I didn't believe you when you taught us to make sure we had a strong social face in the social world, in Facebook, whatever venue you use. Social media, make sure you have a following prior to publishing. I believed in my book. My publisher believed in my book. I still believe in my book. I just don't have 10,000 followers on my Facebook page. And you said, make sure you have a big audience. And that's what's happened. The 400 people who know me have purchased my book. And they love it. It's wonderful. I get such good feedback from people who read it, but people who don't know me. So become known. If you care about selling what you've written, do follow Brian's instructions and get that social media platform going.
Well, unfortunately, there isn't any other choice. Well, I mean, whether it's social media or not isn't the point. It's awareness.
It's
It's like if
aware,
no one knows about your book, they can't get
right,
interested in it. They can't buy it or whatever. So somehow you have to build awareness about your book. And,
right.
unfortunately or fortunately, social media and other online tools
Hmm.
are one of the major ways to accomplish
Right,
that. I mean, you can certainly go out and make speeches, in
right,
front of people as much as you can, right? Which is a
right,
good thing too. But, any of these avenues are relatively limited in scope and take time to develop.
right,
And people don't realize that you need to start, I
right.
love the title of this one book, Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty.
Yes, that's it. That's it right there. That's it. I had two pro- two different libraries invited me to come the first month my published date, and then two bookstores, and only people who know me came. So that's it. The broader audience is
Mhm.
necessary.
And it's difficult. I mean, it's gotten more difficult, quite frankly, from what I've seen over the
Yeah.
last few years.
Yes. Yes.
So what other advice do you have for new writers?
Do it. Just do it. Just just make the decision. If you're anything like me, you've been saying for decades, I'm going to write a book. So just do it and get it done and get it out and have it read by some people. And if you really like writing, then get a social media platform where you can share your ideas. And it's important that we all share our ideas. We are so clever. We all have really good things to say, and so often we feed on each other's positivity. And
Oh, yeah,
isn't that what we need right now in our world is more light?
absolutely. Absolutely. So I have to ask you if there's any future books or other kinds of projects that you have in mind that you're able to talk about.
There is another book scrambling around up there. In the what is it? Hercule Poirot says the gray matter. Um, so as a churchy girl, the greatest commandment, to love the Lord your God with all your mind, heart, soul, and strength, to love your neighbor as yourself. And people say that so fast that they listen to the first two, love God, love neighbor. I'm supposed to love God, love neighbor. Yeah, the last word is yourself.
Hmm.
And we are a culture of people who do not give ourselves credit. Some of us don't or treat ourselves worse than we would treat our enemies. We say things to ourselves that are negative. And so I think that would be the book that I would want to share is how to love yourself,
Hmm.
how
Hmm.
to be your own best friend.
Well, I think that can help everyone. So,
Yes. Yes.
well, Deborah, I'm really thrilled that you made this book happen. As
Thank
I said,
you.
again, this is the title is Words, Wonder, and the Divine in You. I always love when some of the alum of our efforts make it to the point and they actually have a book published and they can
I
talk
know.
about it with us. So thank you for doing that. And again, everyone go to deborahroof.com and learn more about all of Deborah's work.
Thank you, Brian, so much.
Thank you.